Admiral Jake Morrison stood at the window of the USS Defiance, looking at the huge space station that held the Galactic Council. The station was massive, bigger than anything humans had ever built. It had shiny towers and metal rings that went on for miles. Ships from many alien races were docked at its many ports. Each ship looked different, just like the aliens who made them. "First time seeing the Council Station, Admiral?" asked Captain Lisa Hayes as she walked up next to him. Jake nodded with a serious face. "Yes, and I hope it's not the last. Everything depends on this meeting." 3 months ago, the Zephyrian Empire had given humanity a choice: join them or die. The Zephyrians controlled 1/3 of the galaxy. Their huge fleets had taken over system after system without mercy. Humanity's only hope was to get the Galactic Council to help them. They needed Earth to be protected as a member world. The shuttle bay doors opened, showing a docking area that could fit ships 10 times bigger than their small transport. As they got off, Jake saw many alien species staring at them. Some pointed at the humans and seemed to laugh. Others just ignored them completely. The council chamber was a giant room shaped like a bowl. Representatives from over 200 species sat in circles around the center. In the middle sat 5 primary counselors. Each one represented one of the galaxy's major powers. The Altarian representative was tall with blue skin and 4 arms. It called the meeting to order. "We now hear from Ambassador Kate Phillips of the Human Delegation," the Altarian said in a clear voice. Kate stepped forward. Her simple diplomatic clothes looked plain next to the fancy outfits and natural features of the alien representatives. "Honored counselors, I ask you to protect humanity under the Galactic Accords. The Zephyrian Empire has threatened to kill our entire species unless we surrender to them." A wave of what sounded like laughter went through parts of the assembly. The Zephyrian representative stood up. It was a huge creature with armor-like skin and many eyes. "The humans talk about threats," the Zephyrian said in a deep voice that made the floor shake, "but they bring nothing to this council except fear. Their entire fleet has only 200 ships. These are old, basic ships that most civilizations here would throw away. They have no important resources, no advanced technology, no military power worth talking about." More laughter filled the chamber. Jake felt his teeth clench as he watched from the viewing area. The Centaurian counselor spoke next. It looked like a mix between a large insect and a tree. "The Zephyrians are right. Humanity has lived alone for too long. They have given nothing to galactic civilization. They have made no interesting technologies and have no strategic value. Why should the Council protect a species that cannot even protect itself?" Kate kept her face calm, but Jake could see she was tense. "Honored counselors, we may be new to the galactic community, but we are a strong species. Our will to fight for our freedom should mean something." "Fight with what?" The Zephyrian's many eyes looked at Kate with disgust. "Your mighty fleet of 200 ships? Our advanced scouts have more ships than your entire military. Your species means nothing. You are barely worth our time." The primary counselor from the Vegan Confederation added its voice. It was a crystal-like being that spoke through musical sounds. "The humans have had very little contact with the greater galaxy. They have shown no innovation beyond basic space travel. They have contributed nothing unique to science or culture. The Council's resources are limited. We must help species and civilizations that can help us in return." Jake watched as representative after representative said similar things. The message was clear. Humanity was too weak, too primitive, too unimportant to get the Council's protection. The session went on for hours, but the decision had been made in the first 30 minutes. When the formal rejection was announced, Jake noticed something others missed. Several representatives from smaller species watched with worried faces. These were civilizations that had also faced extinction. They said nothing, but their silence said everything. "The petition is denied," announced the Altarian primary counselor. "Humanity's request for protection under the Galactic Accords is rejected by majority vote. This session is over." As the representatives began to leave, Jake heard pieces of conversations in different alien languages. His translator picked up phrases like, "they will be conquered," "natural selection," and the strong eat the weak. The galactic community had written humanity off as just another failed species headed for the history books. Kate came back too. Jake and the rest of the human delegation in the viewing area. Her diplomatic calm finally broke, showing the anger and frustration underneath. They didn't even listen to our arguments, she said quietly. To them, we're nothing more than a species that will die out. Maybe that's good, Jake replied, surprising her. Now we know where we stand. No one is coming to save us, it's just us against the Zephyrians. As they got ready to leave the station, Jake felt that the Galactic Council had made a big mistake. They looked at humanity's small fleet and thought it meant weakness. They saw Earth's short history of space travel and decided humans were primitive. But they failed to understand what made humanity truly dangerous. Humans were willing to fight against impossible odds, and they could think of new solutions when desperate. The shuttle ride back to the USS Defiance was quiet. Each member of the delegation was lost in their own thoughts. As Earth got bigger in the window, Jake began making plans. The galaxy had dismissed humanity as unimportant. Maybe that dismissal would turn out to be their biggest mistake. Back on Earth, billions of people waited for news. They had hoped the Galactic Council would help them. Instead, they learned they were completely alone. The Zephyrian Empire was coming, and Earth had only its small fleet of 200 ships to defend against thousands of enemy vessels. But Jake Morrison had been in many battles before. He knew that sometimes the side that looked weaker could win if they were smart enough and brave enough. The aliens laughed at humanity's tiny fleet, but they had no idea what humans could do when they had nothing left to lose. In the depths of space, Zephyrian war fleets were already moving toward Earth. Their commanders were confident this would be an easy victory. After all, what could 200 primitive human ships do against the might of an empire that had conquered half the galaxy? They were about to find out that humans had a few surprises in store for them. Sometimes the smallest dog has the biggest bite, and sometimes the species everyone laughs at turns out to be the most dangerous of all. The stage was set for a battle that would change the galaxy forever. The aliens had mocked humanity's tiny fleet, but soon they would learn why that had been a terrible mistake. Admiral Korvac looked at the display screen on his flagship, the Devastator. He smiled as he saw over 3,000 Zephyrian ships spread across space. This was the biggest fleet ever put together in this part of the galaxy. Each ship had enough weapons to destroy entire planets. "Give me a report," Korvac ordered, pointing at different parts of the screen with his forearms. Commander Zethrak stepped forward. "All our battle groups are in position around the human solar system, Admiral. Our scouts say the humans only have a few ships moving around. Most are staying close to their home planet." Korvac made a clicking sound with his mouth parts. This was how his species showed they were happy. 200 ships against 3,000, they must know they cannot win. "Maybe they will give up without fighting," Zethrak suggested. "That would save us time and weapons." "No," Korvac said firmly. "The humans said no to our kind offer to rule them. They chose death instead of joining us. We will give them exactly what they asked for." On the USS Defiance orbiting Earth, Admiral Jake Morrison was having his own meeting. The command center was busy with officers from different ships talking through holographic screens. "Everyone knows the situation," Jake began. "The Zephyrian fleet has 15 ships for every one of ours. Their ships are bigger, their weapons are stronger, and their technology is better than ours in most ways." Captain Ben Rogers from the USS Vengeance looked worried. "Sir, those are not good odds for any battle." "No, they're not," Jake agreed. "But these are the odds we have, and I didn't call this meeting to talk about giving up." The room became quiet. Jake turned on a new part of the display, showing detailed pictures of Zephyrian ship designs. "Our intelligence people have been studying how the Zephyrians fight for months. They are powerful, but they always do the same things. They win by having more ships and bigger guns. Their fighting methods haven't changed for hundreds of years because they never had to change." Commander Amy Carter from the USS Liberty raised her hand. "What are you saying we should do, Admiral?" "I'm saying we don't fight the battle they expect us to fight," Jake replied. "Captain Sarah Mitchell, tell us about Project Prometheus." Captain Mitchell was a 40-year-old woman with gray hair and calm eyes. She turned on her part of the display. All changes have been finished, Admiral. Every ship in our fleet now has the new systems. We've tested them in simulations, but we won't know if they really work until we use them in a real fight. Project Prometheus? Asked Captain Rogers. I never heard of this project. Jake looked at Mitchell. For the past 6 months, while our diplomats tried to get the Council to help us, our engineers and scientists were working on something else. We made changes to our ships. These changes came from human ideas, not from copying alien technology. The display showed the inside of human ships, highlighting new systems that weren't there before. The other captains looked at the pictures with interest and confusion. I don't understand, said Commander Carter. These look like stronger ship frames and some kind of new engine system, but I don't see how this helps us against so many enemy ships with bigger weapons. That's exactly what we want the Zephyrians to think, Jake replied. Captain Mitchell, explain what we did. Mitchell stepped forward with a serious face. The changes fall into 3 groups. First, we rebuilt our ship hulls to survive forces that would normally rip them apart. Second, we installed new systems that let us make moves no other species has ever tried. Third, we changed our weapons to work in ways that normal military thinking says is impossible. Impossible how? Asked Captain Rogers. You'll see during the battle, Jake said. Right now, I need you to trust that we have a plan. More importantly, I need you to trust your crews and trust in human creativity. After the meeting ended and the captains went back to their ships, Jake stayed in the command center with Sarah Mitchell and a few senior officers. Do you think it will work? Asked Colonel Danny Wright, the fleet's main tactical officer. It has to work, Jake replied, because if it doesn't, humanity dies in the next 3 days. The Zephyrian fleet had surrounded the entire solar system, blocking all escape routes. Their huge ships moved with the confidence of a species that had conquered half the galaxy. Admiral Korvac watched the human formations like a scientist looking at bugs he was about to step on. They're setting up defensive positions around their homeworld, reported Commander Zethrak. Normal formation, nothing strange. Of course, Korvac replied. They know they cannot run away, so they will make their last stand protecting their planet. It is almost brave, even though it's pointless. The Zephyrian admiral turned on the communication system, sending his message to all frequencies so the humans would definitely hear it. Human commanders, this is Admiral Korvac of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. You are surrounded and outnumbered. You cannot win. Surrender now, and we will kill you quickly. Keep fighting, and we will turn your world into dust before we destroy your pathetic excuse for a fleet. The answer came from Admiral Morrison himself. His face appeared on the main screen of every Zephyrian ship. Admiral Korvac, this is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Fleet. We got your message and our answer is simple. Go to hell. Korvac's mouth parts clicked very fast, showing he was very angry. Fine, human. You have chosen to die. All ships get into attack formation. The final battle starts in 1 hour. As the massive Zephyrian fleet began to move into position, human ships throughout the system made their final preparations. In engineering rooms, technicians did last-minute checks on systems that had never been used in real combat. On ship bridges, captains looked over battle plans that went against hundreds of years of how space battles were supposed to be fought. On Earth, billions of people looked up at the sky, knowing that the next few hours would decide whether humanity survived or became just another forgotten story in the galaxy's history. But the humans had a secret. While the Zephyrians saw only 200 weak ships, they had no idea what those ships could really do. The aliens were about to learn that sometimes the smallest fighter can knock out the biggest bully. The stage was set for a battle unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. And humanity was about to show everyone that being small didn't mean being weak. The battle started exactly as Admiral Korvac expected. The Zephyrian fleet, spread out in a huge crescent shape, moved toward the human defensive positions with overwhelming firepower. Energy beams that could cut through asteroids shot out from the alien ships, hitting human vessels that looked tiny in comparison. Direct hit on the USS Courage, reported Commander Zethrak. The ship is breaking apart. Korvac watched happily as the human ship exploded in a bright flash of light. 1 down, 199 to go. Keep the formation and continue attacking. But as the Zephyrian admiral watched the first human ship die, something unexpected happened. The remaining human ships didn't run away or try to stay at safe distances like normal military rules said they should. Instead, they sped up and flew directly toward the Zephyrian formation. "What are they doing?" Zethrak asked, sounding confused. On the USS Defiance, Admiral Jake Morrison watched the tactical display with a grim face. Losing the courage and her crew of 200 people hurt badly, but there was no time to grieve. "All ships start Phase 2, he commanded. "Remember, speed is everything. Get close and stay close." Throughout the human fleet, captains acknowledged the order and began doing maneuvers that should have been suicide for any normal spacecraft. The USS Liberty, under Commander Amy Carter's command, dove directly between two massive Zephyrian battleships coming so close that the alien ships couldn't fire without hitting each other. "Sir, they're using our own ships as shields," reported a Zephyrian weapons officer. "I can't get a clear shot." The same thing happened all across the battlefield as human ships wove through the Zephyrian formation with crazy precision. The modifications Captain Mitchell had mentioned became clear as human vessels pulled forces that should have turned their crews into liquid and made turns that should have torn their ships apart. "How are they surviving those moves?" Korvac demanded. "We don't know, Admiral," Zethrak replied. "Our intelligence said their technology was primitive, but these abilities are beyond what we've seen from any species." The answer was in the modifications humanity had made to their ships over the past 6 months. While other species had focused on making their ships bigger and more powerful, human engineers had worked on making them more maneuverable and tougher. The new systems let crews survive accelerations that would kill anyone in normal spacecraft, while stronger hull designs let the ships handle stresses that would destroy other vessels. Captain Sarah Mitchell, commanding the USS Phoenix, showed how effective these modifications were as she led her ship in a spinning attack run that brought her within meters of a Zephyrian heavy cruiser's hull. "We're in weapons range," reported her tactical officer Lieutenant Pete Johnson. "Starting close-range attack." The Phoenix's weapons opened fire at point-blank range, targeting specific systems instead of trying to destroy the much larger enemy ship completely. Human weapons, while less powerful than Zephyrian ones, proved devastatingly effective when used with surgical precision on critical parts. "Their engine system is down," Johnson reported. "The target is dead in space." This pattern repeated throughout the battlefield, as human ships used their superior maneuverability to disable rather than destroy Zephyrian vessels. It was a strategy born of necessity. Humanity didn't have the firepower for a direct fight, but they could make enemy ships useless through targeted strikes. Admiral Korvac watched in growing anger as his formation began to fall apart. Ships that should have been able to destroy the human fleet with ease found themselves unable to target vessels that moved like fighters while keeping the structural strength of much larger craft. "Order all ships to fall back to minimum safe distance," he commanded. "We'll use our long-range advantage to finish them." But as the Zephyrian fleet tried to reorganize, the humans started Phase 3 of their battle plan. Instead of letting the enemy withdraw, they pressed their attack even more aggressively. "All ships, use swarm tactics," Admiral Morrison ordered. "Make them pay for every meter." The human fleet split into smaller groups, each targeting a different section of the Zephyrian formation. Like a pack of wolves attacking a herd of elephants, they used coordination and speed to overcome their individual disadvantages. Commander Linda Hayes of the USS Retribution led a group of 6 ships in a coordinated assault on a Zephyrian battle group. "Target their command ship's sensor array," she ordered. "Blind them first, then disable their weapons." The attack worked perfectly. The Zephyrian flagship found itself unable to coordinate with its escorts as human ships darted in and out of weapons range, striking at critical systems before pulling back to attack different targets. "This is impossible," Korvac snarled as damage reports flooded in from across his fleet. "How can such primitive ships be causing this much damage?" The answer was becoming clear to those watching the battle from far away. Humanity's apparent technological inferiority had hidden their true advantage. Tactical innovation born of desperation and a willingness to try maneuvers that other species thought impossible. Captain Ben Rogers demonstrated this perfectly when he led the USS Vengeance in an attack that no alien commander would ever consider. He flew his ship directly at a Zephyrian destroyer, pulling up at the last second and using his ship's gravity wake to destabilize the enemy vessel's navigation systems. The alien ship spun out of control, unable to target anything. Enemy destroyer, disabled without firing a shot, Rogers reported with satisfaction. As the first hour of combat ended, the balance of power had shifted dramatically. While the Zephyrian fleet still had more ships, nearly one-third of their vessels had been disabled or severely damaged. The human fleet, despite losing several ships, remained an effective fighting force. Throughout the galaxy, long-range sensors picked up the battle's progress. On space stations and alien worlds, military commanders watched in disbelief as 200 human ships not only survived, but actually won against 3,000 Zephyrian warships. But Admiral Morrison knew this was only the beginning. The Zephyrians would adapt to human tactics eventually, and when they did, numbers would once again become the deciding factor. "All ships, prepare for Phase 4, he announced. "This is where we find out if we're clever enough to survive." Admiral Korvac, his pride wounded and his fleet in chaos, made a desperate decision. If conventional tactics couldn't defeat these impossible humans, he would try something else. "All ships, implement close combat protocol," he ordered. "If they want to fight up close, we'll give them what they want." The massive Zephyrian ships began moving toward the human formation, their heavy armor and powerful weapons ready for close-range combat. But they had no idea that this was exactly what the humans had been hoping for. The real battle was about to begin. As the battle entered its second day, news of the fight had spread throughout the galaxy. On the Galactic Council station, emergency meetings were happening as representatives tried to understand how humanity's weak fleet was not only surviving, but actually winning against the mighty Zephyrian Empire. The Altarian primary counselor, who had rejected humanity's request just weeks earlier, looked at incoming battle reports with growing shock. "These reports must be wrong," he said. "A fleet of 200 primitive ships cannot defeat 3,000 Zephyrian warships." But the proof was right there. Long-range sensors throughout the sector confirmed what seemed impossible. The human fleet had disabled or destroyed over half of the Zephyrian force while losing fewer than 30 ships themselves. Meanwhile, in the Sol system, Admiral Korvac faced the most embarrassing moment of his military career. His once mighty fleet was falling apart, with many ships floating dead in space or limping away from the battlefield. The humans had used tactics that went against everything the Zephyrian military had learned over hundreds of years of conquest. "Admiral, we're getting communications from the Galactic Council," reported Commander Zethrak, his voice carrying a note of panic that would have been unthinkable days earlier. "What do they want?" Korvac asked tiredly. "They're demanding an immediate ceasefire and the withdrawal of all Zephyrian forces from human space." Korvac's many eyes focused on the communication with disbelief. "They demand? When we gave our ultimatum to the humans, the Council refused to help. Now they think they can give orders to the Zephyrian Empire?" The truth was that the galaxy's power structure had changed overnight. Species that had previously seen humanity as unimportant now saw them as a potential ally, or, more frighteningly, a potential threat. If 200 human ships could destroy the Zephyrian fleet, what could a larger human force do? On the USS Defiance, Admiral Jake Morrison got his own communication from the Galactic Council. Ambassador Kate Phillips, who had been called back to Earth when diplomacy failed, joined him in reading the message. "They want to negotiate," Kate said with barely hidden irony. "The same council that wouldn't even think about protecting us now wants to arrange a ceasefire." Jake studied the formal communication, noticing the respectful tone that had been missing during Kate's earlier visit. "They're scared," he realized. "Not of the Zephyrians, of us." This fear became more obvious as reports came in from other parts of the galaxy. Species that had stayed neutral in previous conflicts were suddenly reaching out to establish diplomatic relations with humanity. Trade offers, military alliance proposals, and cultural exchange programs flooded Earth's communication networks. Captain Sarah Mitchell, whose tactical innovations had been crucial to humanity's success, found herself in an unexpected position. Military commanders from dozens of species asked for detailed analyses of human battle tactics, offering big payments for information about Earth's revolutionary military technology. "They don't understand," she explained to Admiral Morrison during a strategy meeting. "They think we developed some kind of superweapon or amazing technology. They can't understand that we simply thought about the problem differently." The truth was both simpler and more complex than the galaxy realized. Humanity's advantage hadn't come from better technology or resources, but from their willingness to question basic assumptions about space combat. While other species had spent hundreds of years perfecting established tactics, humans had started with a clean slate and developed entirely new approaches. The modifications to human ships, while significant, were based on principles that any species could have used. The difference was that other civilizations had never thought such modifications were necessary. Their own success had made them lazy, unable to imagine that there might be better ways to fight. As the third day of combat began, Admiral Korvac made a desperate decision. Rather than accepting the inevitable defeat, he ordered his remaining forces to implement a kamikaze strategy, trying to take as many human ships down with them as possible. "All vessels implement final protocol," he broadcast to his fleet. "If we cannot conquer them, we will make sure they cannot threaten anyone else." But even this last attempt failed spectacularly. Human ships, with their superior maneuverability and tactical coordination, managed to avoid most of the suicide attacks while destroying the attacking vessels at safe distances. The final blow came when Captain Ben Rogers, commanding the USS Vengeance, managed to disable the Devastator itself. Using a tactic that involved using his ship's gravity wake to mess up the enemy vessel's navigation systems, he made the massive flagship helpless without firing a single shot. Admiral Korvac, facing capture and the complete destruction of his fleet, activated his ship's self-destruct sequence. The Devastator's explosion marked the end of Zephyrian ambitions in human space, and sent a clear message to the rest of the galaxy: humanity was no longer a species to be dismissed. In the aftermath of the battle, the galaxy's political landscape changed completely. The Zephyrian Empire, humbled by their defeat, withdrew from several systems they had previously controlled. Other aggressive species reconsidered their expansion plans, unwilling to face an enemy that had proven capable of the impossible. The Galactic Council, recognizing their earlier mistake, formally invited humanity to join as a full member with all the rights and protections they had previously been denied. Ambassador Kate Phillips accepted the invitation, but with conditions that reflected humanity's new position of strength. "We'll join the council," she announced during the formal ceremony, "but as equals, not as beggars. And we'll be fighting for the protection of other species that find themselves in the position we were in just months ago." Admiral Jake Morrison, now regarded as one of the galaxy's best military strategists, found himself getting requests for military cooperation from species that had once viewed humans as primitive. The irony wasn't lost on him that humanity's tiny fleet had become the most respected naval force in the sector. As Earth celebrated its unlikely victory, the lessons of the conflict spread throughout the galaxy. Innovation, adaptability, and the courage to challenge established thinking had proven more valuable than raw power or superior numbers. The species that had mocked humanity's small fleet now understood a basic truth. Sometimes the greatest threats come not from those who appear strongest, but from those who refuse to accept that strength has only one definition. Throughout the galaxy, younger civilizations watched and learned, understanding that survival sometimes required not just fighting harder, but fighting smarter. The humans had shown that being small and seemingly weak could actually be advantages if you were creative enough to use them properly. And in the vast expanse of space, other small fleets belonging to underestimated species began to train in new ways inspired by humanity's example. The age of humanity had begun, not through conquest or domination, but through the simple yet revolutionary act of thinking differently about what was possible. The galaxy would never be the same again, and it was all because a species everyone laughed at refused to give up when faced with impossible odds.